I'll take you through all of these sections here one by one so you really understand what it's like, and we'll also discuss some sort of scenario which I set up for the next couple of years in case you would sell the property after 10 years. So this is really not what you're looking for if you want to invest in cash flow positive real estate. However, there might be a bunch of reasons to still invest in that, and we'll get to that here in a second. Hi guys, I'm Hans. If you're interested in real estate investments, then watch this video. Today we're diving into a property evaluation example in Freiburg, Germany. I'll walk you through each section of this calculation sheet, covering the most important financial figures you need to make informed decisions. We'll examine the expected rental income, operating costs, and performance indicators to get a clear view of how the property could evolve over time. By the end of this video, you'll have a solid grasp on evaluating a property like this on your own. So now let's get right into it. And before we start, let me just give you some more information. I have been getting many requests lately about whether I could help people or my viewers here on this channel to find a suitable apartment for a reasonable price which he or she could invest in. I do offer a consultation, so if you're interested in that, hit me up via email, which is linked down below in the description. But that's it, let's get into the video now. And now let's start right off. So what we can see here is the different sections of this calculation example spreadsheet. I have filled it all in based on some apartment, which I will show you here in a second, and which I will also link down below if you need to get it, so that you can try it out yourself, put your numbers in for about apartment you're looking at. So let's quickly have a look at the apartment first. What am I evaluating here at the moment? So actually there are two apartments for sale at the moment, and let's quickly have a look at what they actually look like. You can see some of the pictures here. So this is the bathroom. It's really basic, it's not too nice, but it does have a hanging toilet, so it can't be too old. You do have the regular tiles in such a smaller sized apartment. You do have a small kitchen here, which you can see, and then this is basically the living and also the bedroom area. It's a really small apartment. This one has 27 square meters. This apartment here is based in the heart of Freiburg. It's a really nice area to live in. Freiburg overall is a rather expensive city comparable to any other big city, just like Frankfurt, Munich, or Berlin even. And this is exactly where the property is located. And what I usually do is I quickly go to Google Maps, just as I'm doing at the moment, and have a look at the apartment or the house in which the apartment is located. So as you can see here, the house overall is not too old. I think the building year or construction year was 1992, which is a decent age, I would say. So you wouldn't really need to worry about anything new or any bigger renovations, which you would have to take care of. So this is really in a solid state, and I think you wouldn't have to touch it for at least 10 years. So that's what it looks like. As I said, there are two apartments available at the moment. This is the empty one, which I just showed you, and then there's also another one which is a bit bigger. It has 37 square meters, is also located in the same house. And let's quickly have a look at what it looks here as well. So this is the bathroom. This one is rented out. As you can see here, there's still stuff laying around from the renter. This one is rented out at a really low rent. This is what it looks like. As I said before, it's a bit bigger. This is the bathroom again. The kitchen area, not really tidied up, but I really don't care about this whenever I'm looking for investments. And then this is the living room or bedroom area as well. Whenever I get a new proposal, the first thing you get is the expose from the broker if you buy it, or if you send it. If you send a request through a broker, you will usually get an expose, which is sort of just like a description of the apartment, what the asking price is, where it's located, and so on. This one is a really basic one, and it's actually just an excerpt or they just created a PDF out of Immobilien Scout, which you can see here. There's the asking price, the square meter, the broker fees, which you would have to pay, in this case, roughly 4,500 euros. You can see also the rent here, which is 550, but this is the warm rent. You gotta be careful about this. The cold rent is 410 euros, and we'll get to that here in a second. And it's built in 1994. As I said before, that's really a good indication that you don't really have to renovate anything big in the next coming years. Also, becoming increasingly important is the energy efficiency class. This one here is D, which is also rather good, I would say, compared to other houses or apartments. And then usually what you can see also is some sort of description of the apartment itself. This one really isn't too spectacular. As I said, it's just an excerpt of Immobilien Scout, but with that we can do our calculation. And now let's basically just get started with this calculation. So what you type, and I'll take you through all of these sections here one by one so you really understand what it's like, and we'll also discuss some sort of scenario which I set up for the next couple of years in case you would sell the property after 10 years. But I'll describe this in more detail here in a few minutes. So let's start with this part. First, you type in the property address just so you have it noted down. There's no connection to any other website or so. Then the buying date when you're planning on buying it. And then we get to the first really important information to calculate this case here. So the square meters overall, it's 37 for this apartment. It doesn't have a parking space associated with it. Usually you would pay an additional 7,000 to 10,000 depending on where the parking space is located for this parking space, but that's not the case for this apartment. So the initial purchase or asking price was 150,000 euros, as you can see down here. However, the broker already mentioned that the seller would be willing to go down to 145, which I would take, obviously, to get a 5,000 euro discount. So I'm putting 145,000 euros in here. The spreadsheet then automatically calculates the square meter, or the price per square meter, which is 3,919 euros. And that's our first really important indication. 3,900 euros is really cheap for Freiburg. How do I know that? Well, I have several apartments in Freiburg already. However, you can also have a look at atlas.immobilienscout.com. And if you type in the exact address of the apartment, which I'm doing over here, you can ask for the average price for which this apartment would sell for usually, or the average square meter price. And as you can see in the screenshot here, on this website, the average asking or the average selling price is 5,700 euros per square meter. As we just saw, it's 3,900 based on my calculations, so that's a really good indication that this is a good price overall. Of course, and I mentioned this before, the rent is really low. That's also why the asking price is rather low, but we'll get to that here in a second. Next, there are also some other costs which are associated to the purchase, such as the broker overall. It's 2.57% in this case. This can vary. Usually it's 3.57. However, it's a bit cheaper over here for this apartment. This is also usually mentioned in the expose. Then, so you just type in the percentage, and then it automatically calculates what the exact fees are. Then you also do have the notary costs, which are 1.5% usually, so that's an additional 2,000 euro. And then you have some other costs, such as the land registry office costs, property transfer tax, which is 5% in the state of Baden-Württemberg, where I'm buying this, and then possibly some other costs, which I have not included in here. So overall, the site costs, the other costs which are associated to the purchase of the property, they accumulate to 13,720 euros. I'm not going to go deeper into this section over here. This is just if you want to renovate the apartment right from the start. For example, you need to redo the kitchen or the bathroom or whatever. You can put the costs of them in here, and then they will just get added to the overall investment which you would have to make. So the total sum of the property, if you would buy it, meaning the purchase price including but also the other initial purchase costs, which I just talked about, they accumulate to 158,000 euros. And I think that's a rather solid price overall. Next, let's have a look at the rent specifically. So at the moment, and you can get that information from the exposé as well, the cold rent, as we call it here in Germany, is 410 euros, which is basically the amount you get straight from the renter. However, and this can be seen in some other documents which I reviewed, the rent was increased a couple of months ago, but only by 8%. From a legal perspective, you can increase the rent if you're renting out the apartment every 3 years by 15%, which means that I can still increase the rent by 7% right after I have bought this apartment. And that would land me at 440 euros overall in cold rent for this apartment. The rent per square meters is then 11.9 euros, which is so cheap for Freiburg. Usually if you would rent it out, and we'll get to this here in a second, you can charge a much higher rent. But now let's go through the calculation. So we got the overall rent and the cold rent and the allocable costs, which are mentioned here. We'll get to that here in a second. Let's go through it one by one real quick. We do have the section of the taxes. As I said before, this is basically depreciation, Abschreibung, or AFA as we call it here in German. And that's usually 2% for apartments and houses. Then you can also indicate the share of the building in the purchase price. And that is also due to tax reasons. I'm not going to dive deeper into that, but usually this percentage is anywhere between 60 and 70%. Let's do 70% in this case. We say that the building, which can be depreciated over a span of 50 years, or 2% per year, makes up 70% of the building, of the purchase price. So the basis for the long-term amortization is 111,000 euros. You don't really have to take that much into account. I would just leave it as it is. Then you can also change the reserves. For example, if you want to include some sort of reserves per square meter, I wouldn't really, you can take that into account. It's a good indication of what you put it or what you should put aside, but I don't really usually fill that out. But let's leave it in for this video. And then you can also put some more KPIs into this forecast here. For example, what you think the cost increase will be on an annual basis for the next couple of years. Also the rent increase, value increase, and whatnot. I usually don't touch these numbers as well. Just keep them as they are. Now it gets more interesting here when we have a look at the operating costs. First, the management costs per month. So we do have allocable and non-allocable costs. Allocable costs are the ones which you can directly hand over to your renter, which means that he or she needs to pay for them. That includes electricity, for example, water, some sort of taxes, any fees which are associated to the house or the apartment themselves, and I described this in more detail in previous videos, so have a look at them if you're interested in that. And then we also have non-allocable costs which cannot be handed over to the renter, which you have to cover yourself as an investor here. These accumulate to 69 euros, the non-allocable costs, which I would have to pay in that case. How did I get these numbers? So usually what you also get from the broker is some sort of Abrechnung, calculation, or Wirtschaftsplan, like a plan for the upcoming years. And if we have a look at that, this is usually what you get. You do have the allocable costs, and they're usually separated like this up here. It's kind of hard to see since it's only some sort of scan. but this one is 1,553 euro. This is on an annual basis, and the non-allocable costs accumulate to 750 euros. If you round it up, also on an annual basis. So that means you would have to divide these numbers by 12 to get it on a monthly basis. And that's exactly what I did. And then you can put it right in here. Now let's have a look at the financing column over here. So I want to finance, as I said before, the purchase price is 145,000 euros. I don't want to put too much equity in due to tax reasons, which means that I would finance the whole 145,000 euros or 100% through my bank. At the moment, I get an interest rate of 4%, and I would repay the loan with 1.5% on an annual basis. And that leads me to 665 euros, which I would have to pay each month to my bank. It also says that in 2057, that's a long time ahead, this will be fully paid off. And probably now the most important part is the KPIs today. We do have the section of the appreciation and value. Let's quickly have a look at it. We say that the asset growth is 2,389 on an annual basis. This one is obviously tied to the value increase assumption we made down here. And then the next section, the rent and rental yield, that's basically the most important thing you would have to look at. So the net cold rent per year, which you would get based on this calculation, is 5,284, which is just this amount times 12. Makes sense, right? And that would lead you to a gross rental yield of 3.6%. And you can see it's already highlighted in red that this is really not a good value. Usually I'm aiming for 6% in Freiburg. In other cities even more. I do have 10% yields, gross yields in other cities, but 3.6 is really low. And this obviously is due to the fact that it's currently rented out at such a low rate. Let's quickly go through the atlas on Immobilien Scout, which I have shown you before. It says the average price is 5,700, but you can also look not only at the purchase price, but also at the renting price or the rent price. And Immobilien Scout Atlas says the average rent price is 14.18 euros, so a bit higher than the roughly 12 euros per square meter we have at the moment. But that's only the average rental price. If I rent out new apartments, which are just partly renovated, for example, this can be much higher. For example, I rent out other apartments for 17 euros per square meter, and then obviously your gross rental yield improves significantly as well. Probably you could even go to a higher amount here, for example 19 or even 20 euros, and you would still find enough renters which would rent your apartment for this price. Obviously it gets a lot more expensive then, so the warm rent is 869 euros at the moment. But the situation in Freiburg is crazy. You could definitely rent it out for this price. However, also keep in mind the legal boundaries which you have. One thing you have to keep in mind is the so-called Mietspiegel, which indicates to which degree you can increase your rent. But that's something I'm not going to dig deeper into in this video. That will be subject to another video. Now, if you have a look at if we would increase the price or the rent to such a high degree, you would get a much higher gross rental yield, which totally makes sense. But let's stick to the old one, which we used to have, because if we're buying this apartment, you would take the rental agreement as it is at the moment, which means that you take over also the renter, and you cannot immediately increase the rent to such a high degree. It also says the factor is 27.4 and the net rental yield is 2.8%. Also two rather important indicators. which you would have to keep in mind. Next, let's have a look at the cash flow per month section over here. And this one is really important as well. That's basically what I'm looking at the first time whenever I put these numbers in. So you do have the warm rent, which is just taken over from this calculation here. You do have the management costs, which are basically just taking over from this one here, the allocable and non-allocable costs. And then you do have the interest on a monthly basis. So that accumulates to 483 euros, which is calculated based on the information we put in before as well. And then also the repayment on a monthly basis. Now, and that's the most important figure here, the cash flow per month. And this one is highly negative, right? So you would need to chip in an additional almost 300 euros if you would purchase this apartment from your own money, right? Also, one important hint, these 300 euros, they are deducted from your taxable income, which means if you take that number times 12, which means on an annual basis, you would reduce your taxable income, for example, from your main job or other investments you make by 3,600 euros each year. Now, this is obviously not where you want to be if you want to invest in real estate. This figure should usually be at least cash flow neutral, meaning it should not be negative to a high degree as it is at the moment, or even should be cash flow positive by, I don't know, 50 or 100 euros. So this is really not what you're looking for if you want to invest in cash flow positive real estate. However, there might be a bunch of reasons to still invest in that, and we'll get to that here in a second. However, after taxes, you would have to chip in 163 euros on a monthly basis. And you can do that once, you can do that twice. I mean, buying one of these apartments to such a negative cash flow. But I would say at the latest, depending on your salary, of course, if you buy 4 or 5 of these apartments, which are highly negative in your cash flow, the bank is just not going to finance you anymore. You can see some more calculations down here. I'm not going to go too much into detail on this. What is also just really important, and this is basically the last section we have down here, the return on equity in year 1. So based on this calculation, based on this rent, especially, your return on equity is 17.4%. So still a lot higher compared to your ROI, return on investment, of other asset classes such as stocks, ETFs, or whatever. And without appreciation, this is again based on this forecast or indication we put in here, this would accumulate to 1.6% only. Now, again, if we would increase this rent significantly, your return on equity would be much higher, right? So always keep that in mind. If you are able to increase the rent in the next couple of years, your return on equity obviously increases as well. Both the return on equity with the value increase in mind, but also without appreciation. But let's go back here now. So this is what the calculation overall looks like. This is how it works. Now you can basically put your numbers in and go through this calculation with another property. However, one thing I would also like to quickly have a look at is this scenario analysis, just to show you that even though you do have such a high negative cash flow, it might still be feasible to invest in such a property. Because remember, the negative cash flow is only due to the low rent we are getting at the moment. Let's have a look at the scenario analysis. What did I do here? So I'm saying that after 10 years, and this is the case here in Germany, you can sell your property tax-free, which means that any profit you make, you don't have to pay taxes on, which is a really nice tax benefit, which you cannot really get in other countries. So what I did here is that I divided these 10 years up into different sections. Let's say in the year 1 to 3, 3 to 6, and then 6 to 7, 6 to 10. What I put down here is the rent per month. We're starting off with 440 euros, as I said, as we put in here, in the first 3 years. Then what I'm saying is that after 3 years, you can increase the rent again by 15%, because that's usually the case here on a legal basis in Germany. So you take that amount, multiply it with 1.15, and then this is the new rent which you will get after 3 years. And then between year 6 and year 10, I'm saying that maybe the old renter moves out because he or she needs to go to a different city for work, for example, and we can rent it out for a new price. In this case, I just took the 19 euros per square meter and multiplied it with the amount of square meters we have, in this case 37. On an annual basis, this is what comes out in cold rent, and then I basically, let me make this a bit bigger here, calculated the best and worst case scenario for each of these, and I added also some comments here which makes it easier for you to understand what I put in here. So this, so between year 1 and year 3, you would take the negative cash flow of 293 euros if you would not be able to change the current rent, and you would leave it as it is at the moment, multiply it with 12 to get to an annual basis, and then times 3 because we're looking at 3 years. Then you would do the same for the next 3 years, only taking into account the increased rent with 506 euros in cold rent now, which means you get a negative cash flow of 230 euros, again times the 12 months and the 3 years. And then also the same is true for the 6 to 10 years. Your negative cash flow is, if you would get such a high rent, 703 euros, your negative cash flow would accumulate to 31 euros times again the 12 months and the 4 years. So this is the worst case scenario, right? Obviously you would have to chip in a lot of money over the span of the next 10 years. In some it's more than 20,000 euros, which is a lot, obviously. In the best case scenario, this is a bit different. What I calculated here is that, for example, whenever you purchased the apartment, you would talk to the renter and just discuss with him or her that you would need to increase the rent and whether that would be possible for him or her. And oftentimes this is really doable, right? You could actually do that, and if he or she agrees to it, you could actually increase the rent by a bit more than these 15%, which are legally possible. So in this case, I increased the rent. I don't recall to which rent, to which amount again, but I said we have a negative cash flow in the first 3 years of 211 euros per month, and then I multiplied it with 12 again for each month and then 3 for each year. So your cash flow is still highly negative, but not as negative compared to the worst case scenario. I then also took some other numbers here for the year 3 to 6, and for example, in this case, the 137 euros negative cash flow on a monthly basis. And then what I'm saying after the year 6, my cash flow is cash flow neutral, meaning I will get exactly the 665 in cold rent after these 6 years from the renter, which means that as I said, my cash flow is neutral or accumulates to 0. What I then did is I took these numbers and did a 10-year forecast. How did I do this? Again, the worst case on the left side and the right and the best case on the right side here. So we do have the initial buying price of the property, which is 145,000 euros. Again, this is what the broker told me the seller would be willing to sell for. Then we do have the repayment of the loan in the course of the 10 years. And you can easily calculate it by taking this number here. We're saying we are handing back 181 euros on a monthly basis to my bank to pay back the loan. So what I calculated is taking this amount times the 12 months we have times the 10 years. So in sum, you would pay back roughly 22,000 euros in the loan over the course of the 10 years. Now let's have a look at the cash flow over 10 years. This is again just the accumulation of these 10 years for the worst case scenario, and then this one here for the best case scenario. as I said before, in either case, you have a highly negative cash flow due to the low current rent, which you would need to take into account here. Then after 10 years, I'm saying I'm selling the property, and what I calculated here is 5,600 euros per square meter. How did I get this number? Again, we looked at Immobilien Scout at Atlas, and this is the current valuation, and this is the current average price per square meter, which means that in 10 years it's likely going to be even higher than that, but let's just be conservative here and calculate with this average price per square meter. So that's exactly what I did, taking these 5,600 euros times the 37 square meters we have, and that would be my selling price after 10 years. And again, we would not be able to, we would not have to pay any taxes on the profit. Also, what you have to keep in mind is taking into account the taxes, right? So what you would look at is the depreciation on a monthly basis. Again, this one accumulates to 197 euros per month. And you would again take that times the 12 months and the 10 years we have overall. And that accumulates to 23,000 euros over the course of 10 years. So I'm saying that after 10 years, you could sell it in the worst case with a profit of roughly 87,000, and in the best case scenario, if you would be able to increase the rent in the course of the 10 years significantly, your best case scenario profit would accumulate to 95,000 euros. And now you're probably all wondering whether I will be buying this apartment. And to be frank, I still haven't finally decided. I do think that the square meter price is really, really low, and that I would be able to make a rather large profit at the end of 10 years if I would sell the apartment again. Of course, obviously, the rent is really low at the moment, and that's always the trade-off you have, right? But I do think that I would be able to increase the rent significantly over the next couple of years, and that would be a good reason for me to really buy this, and to also have this tax benefit of having a negative cash flow in the next years. So in summary, I think I will buy this apartment and maybe also the other one, which is being offered at the moment, due to the overall calculation we have looked at the moment, but also due to the overall condition of the house. As I said before, the construction year of the house is 1994, so that's really not too old. I wouldn't have to chip in much money in the next couple of years, so there wouldn't be any bigger renovations coming up. And I think taking all this into account, this would be a good investment for me at the moment. So as of now, I think I will be buying it, but I will tell you more about this in the next couple of videos. I hope you guys enjoyed this week's video. If you liked it, please comment down below and give me a thumbs up. Also, make sure to subscribe to my channel. If you do have any questions, hit me up in the comment section down below. Also, as I said before, I'm open for consultations. If you need help with finding a suitable apartment, hit me up via email. You can find it in the description below. That's it for this week. See you guys soon. Take care. Bye.